Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. For years, I thought consistency was proof of love. Every morning, my alarm went off at 6:10 a.m. sharp. I'd roll out of bed quietly so I wouldn't wake Vanessa Rowland, slip into the kitchen, and start the same ritual. Coffee brewing, news playing low, calendar open on my phone. Numbers, meetings, projections. My life ran on structure, and I took pride in that. Vanessa used to say she admired it. She worked in brand consulting, events, campaigns, social presence. Her world revolved around impressions and energy. She dressed like every day was an opportunity to be noticed. Bright colors, confident posture, a smile that made strangers feel important. When we first met, her passion felt magnetic. She talked about ideas with fire in her eyes, about how life should feel alive. I was the one who made things stable. I paid off her condo early. I handled investments quietly. I never missed a bill, never forgot an anniversary, never failed to show up when she needed support. When she wanted to quit a job she hated, I encouraged her. When she launched her own consulting brand, I funded it without hesitation. I believed partnership meant being the ground someone could stand on. Somewhere along the way, Vanessa started treating that ground like it was boring. She stopped asking about my day. Conversations became surface level, safe, empty. At night, she scrolled endlessly on her phone while I read reports beside her, the space between us growing wider without either of us moving. Her schedule changed. Networking dinner, she'd say, already halfway out the door. Client drinks ran late. She'd text, hours after she was supposed to be home. "Don't wait up," became a phrase I heard too often. At first, I told myself this was normal. She was building something. She was ambitious. I respected ambition. But ambition doesn't explain secrecy. Her phone never left her hand. Notifications silenced. Screen tilted away from me instinctively. When I entered a room, conversations ended mid-sentence. If I asked who she was texting, she answered too quickly, like the response had been prepared. One name started echoing in my mind, even before I consciously admitted why. Logan Pierce. She mentioned him once, casually. An old connection. Someone she'd known back in the day. The way she said it was light, but her eyes lingered somewhere else while she spoke. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I paid attention. I noticed she dressed differently on certain nights. More effort, more intention. I noticed how she laughed more freely when she thought I wasn't listening. I noticed how she criticized me in subtle ways, like she was slowly rewriting who I was in her mind. "You've gotten predictable," she said once, not cruelly, just honestly. "You don't really surprise me anymore." That sentence stayed with me. The first undeniable crack came on a Sunday afternoon. Vanessa had rushed out to meet a friend and left her laptop open on the dining table. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious until a message popped up across the screen. "Being with you reminds me of who I used to be." No emojis, no jokes, no ambiguity. My chest tightened, not with rage, but clarity. I finally understood something important. She wasn't confused. She wasn't lonely. She was reaching backward, toward a version of herself she believed she'd outgrown me to become. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathe, realizing the marriage I was protecting no longer existed. And in that silence, I made a decision. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't argue. And I definitely wouldn't react emotionally. If Vanessa wanted passion, she was about to learn what intensity really looked like. When patience runs out. I didn't confront Vanessa after that message. That surprised even me. Instead, I slipped back into routine like nothing had changed. I kissed her cheek before work. I asked how her meetings went. I listened. I nodded. I played the role of the steady husband she thought she'd already outgrown. My name is Julian Rowland, and patience has always been my sharpest weapon. The more normal I acted, the more careless Vanessa became. She stopped hiding things the way people do when they still feel guilt. Her phone stayed face down, but she no longer flinched when it buzzed. She hummed while getting dressed, choosing outfits with a kind of excitement I hadn't seen directed at me in years. When she laughed, it wasn't forced anymore. It was full, alive, just not with me. Her criticisms sharpened too, small, precise cuts meant to make me feel smaller without ever starting a fight. You don't really feel things the way other people do, she said one evening while we ate dinner in silence. You're safe, Julian. That's nice. But sometimes safe feels empty. I looked at her across the table, at the woman I had built a life around, and realized she had already justified everything she was doing. People who plan to betray you always do. Logan Pierce entered my life properly a week later. Vanessa brought him up casually over coffee, like she was testing the sound of his name in our space. I ran into Logan the other day, she said, stirring her cup. He's in town more often now. Consulting stuff. I kept my expression neutral. That's so, I replied. She watched me closely, like she was hoping for jealousy. When it didn't come, something unreadable crossed her face. Almost disappointment. He hasn't changed much, she added. Still intense. Still passionate. There it was. That word again. Passionate. The word she used whenever she wanted to justify chaos. I nodded once. People rarely do change. That night, after she fell asleep, I finally allowed myself to look deeper. I didn't hack. I didn't spy. I didn't cross lines that would make me feel like someone I wasn't. I simply followed patterns. Dates. Times. Locations she'd mentioned casually, and then forgotten she'd told me about. Patterns never lie. Within days, I knew where she went on her late work nights. A wine bar downtown. A private corner table. Low lighting. The kind of place where conversations feel intimate even when they shouldn't be. I went once. Alone. I sat at the bar, nursing a drink I barely touched, and watched from a distance. Logan Pierce was exactly what I expected. Confident posture. Easy smile. The kind of man who thrived on attention and mistook intensity for depth. He leaned in close when he spoke. He touched Vanessa's wrist when he laughed. He looked at her like she was a prize he'd reclaimed. And she let him. The way she smiled at him hurt more than the betrayal itself. It was softer, warmer, like she was remembering something she believed she'd lost because of me. I left before they noticed me. I didn't confront her then either. Because revenge isn't about explosions. It's about control. Logan wasn't just an old flame. He was married. That discovery came quietly, through a mutual connection who didn't know what they were revealing. Claire Donnelly, an industry acquaintance, mentioned Logan's wife in passing during a phone call, how Megan Pierce was organizing a charity event, and how proud Logan was of her. Proud. That word sat heavy in my chest. So now I knew everything I needed. Vanessa wasn't chasing passion. She was chasing validation. And Logan wasn't in love. He was reliving an ego boost from the past. Two selfish people mistaking nostalgia for destiny. I adjusted my life accordingly. I moved assets. Not dramatically. Just enough to be prepared. I documented timelines. I saved messages. Not for blackmail, but for truth. I spoke to an attorney quietly, calmly, like a man discussing future renovations instead of the collapse of his marriage. At home, Vanessa grew bolder. She compared me to Logan indirectly now, praising traits I supposedly lacked. He listens, she said one night, scrolling through her phone. He actually feels things. I smiled faintly. I feel plenty. I just don't perform it. She laughed, but there was an edge to it. Like my calm, unsettled her. Good, because the more secure she felt in her choices, the less she noticed the ground shifting beneath her. A few days later, she mentioned the upcoming reunion. Everyone's going, she said. Old friends. Old memories. It'll be fun. The way she said fun told me everything. She wanted an audience. She wanted to feel admired. Desired. She wanted to rewrite the story of her life in front of people who only knew fragments of the truth. I agreed instantly. Of course, I said. We should go. She blinked, surprised. Maybe she'd expected resistance. Maybe she'd hoped for it. That night, lying awake beside her again, I didn't feel anger. I felt ready. Because the thing about people who humiliate you publicly is this. They assume you'll either break or explode. They never expect you to stand perfectly still and let the truth walk into the room on its own. The days leading up to the reunion felt strangely calm. Vanessa was in a good mood, too good. She hummed while getting dressed, practiced smiles in the mirror, and spent extra time choosing what to wear. Not once did she ask my opinion. She didn't need it. In her mind, the night already belonged to her. I played my role perfectly. I listened when she talked. I offered to drive. I even complimented her dress the night before, watching her pause just long enough to absorb it before pretending it didn't matter. But inside, everything was calculated. The reunion was being held at a renovated hotel ballroom downtown. High ceilings, soft lighting, the kind of place meant to impress people who wanted to feel important again. Old classmates, former friends, people frozen in time, still measuring their worth against who they used to be. Vanessa thrived in environments like that. The moment we walked in, she straightened her posture. Her smile sharpened. She floated from group to group like she'd been waiting years for this moment. Laughter followed her. Attention too. I stayed a step behind, quiet, observant, letting people underestimate me. That was always their mistake. Logan Pierce arrived 20 minutes later. Vanessa noticed immediately. I felt it before I saw it. The subtle shift in her body, the way her shoulders squared, the way her expression softened into something intimate. She didn't look back at me. She didn't have to. Logan walked in like he owned the place. Confident, relaxed, soaking in recognition. People greeted him warmly. He hugged former classmates. He laughed loudly. And when his eyes landed on Vanessa, the look they exchanged said everything words didn't need to. Recognition. Familiarity. History. They hugged. Too long. When she pulled back, she was glowing. "Julian," she said finally, gesturing toward me like an afterthought. "This is Logan. We go way back." Logan shook my hand firmly, his smile polite but dismissive. He looked at me the way men do when they've already decided where they stand in comparison. "Good to finally meet you," he said. "Likewise," I replied calmly. He didn't know who I was beyond what Vanessa had told him, and I was certain she hadn't painted me generously. The evening unfolded exactly as I expected. Vanessa drank more than usual. Her laughter grew louder, her stories bolder. She reminisced openly, too openly, about the past, about how things used to feel, how intense everything had been back then. Each story placed Logan at the center, casting him as the spark she'd lost. People listened. Some smiled awkwardly. Others leaned in, sensing drama. And then she crossed a line she couldn't uncross. It happened near one of the high tables, surrounded by a small crowd. Someone joked about old relationships, about the one that got away. Vanessa laughed, wine glass raised, eyes flicking between Logan and the people around her. She said something that made the room react. A collective sound of surprise, amusement, discomfort. I won't repeat her words. I don't need to. The message was clear enough. She was comparing, measuring, declaring that the man she married lacked what the man from her past still had. She did it lightly, like a joke. Like humiliation could be softened if it came wrapped in laughter. People looked at me, some with pity, some with curiosity, some waiting to see how I'd respond. Vanessa glanced at me too, her smile daring me to react. She expected anger, embarrassment, maybe a sharp retort she could frame as insecurity. I didn't give her any of that. I smiled, not tightly, not forced, calm, controlled. And then I spoke. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply asked a question, one that redirected attention with surgical precision. I gestured casually toward the far side of the room. Out of curiosity, I said evenly, "Does Logan's wife know he's here tonight?" The laughter stopped. Logan stiffened instantly. Vanessa turned pale. People followed my gaze, confusion spreading as heads turned. Across the room, near the dessert table, stood a woman with dark hair pulled back neatly, dressed elegantly but simply. She was talking to another guest. Unaware, she'd just become the center of the evening. That was Megan Pierce, Logan's wife. Vanessa's mouth opened slightly, then closed. For the first time that night, she looked uncertain. "What are you talking about?" she asked too quickly. I kept my tone calm, almost gentle. I thought since we were sharing personal reflections, it might be fair to include everyone involved. Logan stepped forward, his confidence cracking. "Julian, man, let's not make this weird." I looked at him for the first time with open clarity. "Oh, it's already weird," I said. "I'm just making sure it's honest." Megan noticed the attention then. She followed the line of sight back to us, her brow furrowing slightly. Logan saw her too, his face drained of color. Vanessa's hand trembled around her glass. "This isn't funny," she whispered. I leaned closer, not threatening, not angry, just certain. It wasn't meant to be. Silence stretched. Conversations around us had stopped completely now. People pretended to check their phones, but no one moved. This was the moment they'd unknowingly waited for all night. Megan approached slowly. "Logan," she said, her voice calm but questioning. He turned, panic barely concealed. "Hey, this isn't what it looks like." Vanessa looked like she might speak, might defend herself, might twist the narrative one last time. "I didn't let her. I think," I said softly, "this is where I step back." And I did. I took one step away from Vanessa. Just one. That small distance said everything. I didn't shout. I didn't expose details. I didn't need to. The truth was standing in the room now, breathing, watching, listening. And as Megan looked from Logan to Vanessa, connecting dots she never should have had to, the weight of the situation settled in. Vanessa had wanted a stage. She got one. Just not the ending she imagined. I left the reunion before the questions started. Not because I couldn't answer them, but because I didn't need to. The truth had already done its work. When I stepped out into the cool night air, my chest felt lighter than it had in months. Not relieved, not triumphant, clear. Vanessa didn't follow me right away. She stayed behind, scrambling, trying to manage the damage. I knew that, because that's who she was, someone who believed every situation could still be controlled if she talked long enough, if she smiled at the right people, if she reframed the story quickly. But some stories don't bend. When she came home hours later, the house felt different, quieter, like the walls themselves had finally heard everything they needed to. She dropped her keys on the counter, hands shaking. "You embarrassed me," she said immediately, her voice tight. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." I looked at her calmly from the living room couch. "You embarrassed yourself long before tonight." She scoffed, pacing. "You had no right to drag his wife into that." "I didn't drag anyone," I replied. I stopped protecting lies that weren't mine to carry. She froze. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a response ready. The next morning, I was gone before she woke up. I didn't disappear dramatically. I didn't storm out. I took what I needed, documents, essentials, clarity, and left a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a copy of the timeline. Dates, locations, messages she'd forgotten she sent. Not accusations. Facts. She called me before noon. "Julian, please," she said, panic bleeding through her voice now. "We could talk about this. You don't have to do this." "I already have," I said calmly. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I met with my attorney that afternoon and filed quietly, efficiently. The assets had already been repositioned. Nothing illegal. Nothing sneaky. Just prepared. Vanessa thought stability meant weakness. She learned otherwise. Logan tried calling too. Twice. I never answered. I didn't need to hear explanations from a man who only understood passion when it served him. Megan reached out once. Her message was brief, grateful, painful, honest. "Thank you for telling the truth." I wished her peace, and meant it. Weeks passed. The house sold quickly. I moved into a smaller place with more light, fewer echoes. Mornings changed. I slept better, ate better, laughed more. I started doing things for myself again. Gym sessions I'd skipped, weekends away I'd postponed, conversations that didn't feel like negotiations. Vanessa struggled. Her business took a hit. Reputation matters when your work depends on trust and image. People talk. Not loudly, but enough. Logan disappeared from her life entirely. Nostalgia doesn't pay bills. It doesn't stay when consequences arrive. One evening, she showed up at my door unannounced. She looked smaller somehow, less polished. Real. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. I studied her for a long moment. I believe she meant it. I also knew it didn't change anything. "I know," I said, "but mistakes don't erase choices." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "You were always there." I didn't appreciate that. "I did," I replied gently. "That's why I walked away." I closed the door without anger, without satisfaction, just certainty. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's letting people face the lives they built without you holding it together for them anymore. And for the first time in a long time, my future felt entirely my own.